help.
No,
They're just getting
I,
blasted.
yeah,
That
they were
team
down.
is the
They're
team is
done.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really are. I
Well,
mean,
man,
I can easily see 10-10.
I
And they got to
suppose it would.
win another game to get to 10, There's no
Yeah.
guarantee they win another game. Their schedule is really tough. They've got some very difficult games left. I mean, 10-10 is probably a best case.
Oh, wait, we're just about ready, folks. Welcome as I get everything
We're
ready
going
here.
live?
We're live.
All right.
So we talk about Illinois
We have viewers.
crumbling.
I didn't realize we were live.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have people logged in.
I have no idea.
Okay.
That is a bit of sophistication that I do not have with.
All right. You can't see it.
I have to log into YouTube. So,
Okay.
if someone else wants to do that,
That's okay.
that'll be the next level when we get to that point,
Right.
guys.
Right. Where we're actually responsive. Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod, live here to talk about MSU's 75-66 win over the Purdue Boilermakers. Before we begin, we'd like to thank Michael Yoakum again for his gift to the show on PayPal. We appreciate Michael and to all of you who help make our show possible. If you appreciate the content we produce, head on over to our support page where you can find the necessary links to subscribe on Patreon, Substack, or YouTube, or give one-time gifts via PayPal or Venmo. As we mentioned before, we will try to do these games post-game shows live, and the timing will depend on when I get home, what's going on, and how long it takes me to get everything hooked up. Please feel free to leave a comment or chat below. To be sure to hit the notification button as well, the bell in the corner, so you know that when we're on the air or drop a new show. Okay, Rod, Michigan State comes up with a real big win. This is one that I think I felt semi-confident that they'd pull off. They win 75-66. Started out okay. Purdue kind of was doing some stuff and really causing some trouble for Michigan State sort of midway through the first half. And then I think Michigan State went on like a 10-0 or 12-0 run.
Yeah.
And really from that point on, sort of controlled the game in some respects. They went at halftime with a 2-point lead. And they came out and really just blasted Purdue. I think Purdue had like 8 points and Michigan State was up like almost 12 or 14. And then Purdue kind of got it down to 6, and it's kind of hung there for most of the second half. And they ended up winning by 9, although there's kind of meaningless baskets at the end of the game. It was a game where it kind of went a little bit the way we thought, in the sense that Purdue really struggled with the 2-point shots. I mean, Michigan State, they were 20
Yeah.
for 22 with lobs and layups, or I'm
Yeah.
sorry, dunks and layups,
Yep.
which is insane. I don't think I've ever seen that many dunks from Michigan State game. I mean, they just
Right.
kept running
It's
the same action
the
through.
the efficiency's great, but the volume is exactly. I said this on the Spartan Mag board already tonight. I think Michigan State. I didn't look at the final numbers. I guess I can do it real quickly here since I've got the stats up. Um, Michigan State was from 2 on the evening. They were um, 24 for
For 35.
35.
Yeah.
That's really, 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 really good.
That's 69%. That's pretty good.
In in again, the percentage is insane, but the volume was what's in question
Yeah.
because we talked about it. The reason Purdue's defense is still, solid, or was before tonight at least, despite having a sub 300 defense from 2, is that they limit opponents' 2-point shots. And I think in the first 10, 12 minutes of the game, you saw why. They actually did a pretty good job of
Yeah.
keeping Michigan State out of the paint, or Michigan State got the ball in the paint, not giving a clean look. And I thought MSU kind of, it never got totally out of control, but I thought they took some threes during that stretch that were maybe not well advised. And it was exactly what Purdue wants to do. But then Michigan State's defense, which and I'm believe me, I'm thrilled with what they did from 2, and it was one of the things we really emphasized. So glad to be proven right. But Michigan State's defense is what keyed that. And I think it was, along with the 2-point shooting, it was the single biggest factor in the game, which is a funny thing to say when the opponent actually shoots a touch over 50% from the floor, and had some turnover issues at times, but it wasn't like a crazy. They didn't have 20 or anything. But I still think Michigan State did an outstanding job of defending that team. And that stretch that you were talking about where they actually took the lead to make sure they had the lead at the half was absolutely keyed by defense. The maybe the key play of the game. I think most people who watched it would probably agree with this. We'll see how you feel. Was they were down 26-24. Jace Richardson causes a deflection and then just outworked Fletcher Lawyer to get to the ball.
Yep.
Kind of throws up a lob that when he first threw it, I actually thought he'd thrown it away.
I thought the same thing. I thought I was like, what you had an easy basket, you just threw it away. And then
But it was great because all he did was just get it in the air and figure that Cohen was going to be first to that ball. It was the angle that was deceptive because I thought he threw it with such an arc that I thought it was actually sailing over the backboard and out of bounds, and it was not. He got a lot of air under it, but it was actually perfect for Cohen to just grab it midair and dunk it. That tied the game, but I thought that was the turning point.
Yes,
from that point, Purdue fought, but it was Michigan State's game from that point on. And I thought during that whole stretch, that's what you were seeing. You were seeing great Michigan State defense turning into transition. I mean, Michigan State had 19 fast break points, which is not unusual for them this year. But if you told me they were going to get that against a Matt Painter team, I would have been floored, absolutely shocked. And it wasn't, in my opinion at least, the vast majority of it was not because Purdue was lazy getting back or had poor floor balance. I thought Michigan State actually keyed a lot of it with live ball turnovers, which, again, very unusual. You don't typically see that against a Purdue team. And they did it. And it seemed like every single one of those opportunities that MSU had, Michigan State converted. Like they were, I don't know what the number was. It was another very impressive. So 19 points
on 11 turnovers. Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, and they had, I think at one point I looked at the scoreboard, they had 10 steals and 11 turnovers for Purdue. So, I mean, almost every single turnover Purdue had was a steal.
We got a slight problem. My headset just ran out of juice.
Oh, I can hear you fine, but
so let me take it off. Can you speak real quickly?
Sure. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well enough.
Okay. That's all right. Well, this is the excitement of doing things live, right?
There we go. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't give me like your battery's half low.
Yeah.
Anything like that. So yeah, we can struggle through this.
No problem. We'll soldier on. All right. Well, let's I guess let's talk about some individual efforts. I thought, some things were I think big in this game, a little bit new. For Frankie Fiddler, I think continues to expand his role. I think defensively, he's become a much bigger presence. I think from the offensive end, he's starting to look a little bit more like early Frankie. Like he's getting in the lane. He hit that three, which of course is going to help his confidence. I think he'll be more comfortable shooting those in the future. I don't think we're expecting him to have high volume on threes.
No,
but just to be a threat is really all you really want from him. Like you shoot one or two game, that's probably good. He only played 17 minutes, but he had 11 points, had a bunch of boards, had at least one steal, maybe two steals. He was very active, and I feel like he has finally feels comfortable in his role at Michigan State on the team. Like he knows what they're doing on offense, he knows what they're doing on defense, and he looks less lost out there.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I'm trying to remember, did he do much against Indiana or Illinois? It seems like
he came in. Yeah, he had a little bit against Indiana where he kind of looked like he had a couple buckets against that zone.
That's right. That's right. He did. He didn't do a lot in the Illinois game, but obviously they didn't need that.
Right.
But I'm saying other than those two, for the most part, he's been playing pretty good basketball for about a month. And I think you're right. I think he just looks. The biggest difference to me is that you look at the way he played tonight, he was aggressive. Like he was looking to take the ball at Purdue.
Yeah.
There was nothing tentative about the way he was playing. And he went right up for that three, didn't hesitate. It was great to see it go, as you say,
Yep.
for his confidence, if nothing else. But just a really, really good night from him. Very happy to see it because it's giving Tom Izzo more options with this team. Because I think what's happened is, and this is not going to be news to anybody, but Xavier Booker's kind of going through a definite lull lately, right? So when you're looking at other options at the 4, when you've got to rest Jackson, well, now you've got Frankie as an option, and as well as Cohen Carr. They're kind of interchangeable, but I actually think they like Cohen a little more as a 3. And he plays more there. But Frankie's been playing a fair amount of 4. And that's a big development. It also gives you a matchup card to play when you're going against a team that's going small ball. So it's a very, very important development. And I made this comment tonight. I just want to raise it here because I think it's actually applicable to Frankie and really most of the guys on this team through the course of the season. I don't know that I've ever seen a college basketball team that I think has been more of a meritocracy than this team.
Yes.
Because the roles and the minutes have fluctuated truly based on what a guy is doing or not doing on a given night. Like, tonight and the last few games, Book hasn't played a whole hell of a lot. Well, he's not doing very much. Frankie's played more. You've seen Cohen Carr's role expand as the years gone on. Carson Cooper has played more, and Zapala, maybe until tonight, has been playing a little less because he hasn't been as good. They were getting better basketball out of Carson, so their roles kind of flipped from where they were maybe a month and a half ago, right? And it's been that way. You see it with the guards. If Jeremy's struggling, you're going to see more of Trey at the point in that given night, or more of Jace. We saw Jaden Akins sit in the last game for about a 6-minute stretch in favor of Kerr Tang because Jaden wasn't playing well. So I really, it's got to be a great feeling for him as a coach. I know he would rather have consistency night in, night out from all the guys. That would be preferable. But I do think this is a really interesting and kind of fun team to watch for that reason. You never, he said it in the post game with Robbie Hummel. He said, I know the other team doesn't know, and I'm paraphrasing, but I know the other team doesn't know who we're going to because I don't know who we're going to. And it's true, right?
Yeah.
And so I think with Frankie had periods this year where his minutes he had some games where he was in single digits, right?
Yeah.
Well, not now because he's playing very, very well. And he really has been since maybe a little bit before the California trip. And it's mostly continued. I mean, most nights he's been pretty damn good. And tonight was, that second half, I think he scored all 11 points in the second half.
I think he had 9, but 9 of his 11. Yeah.
9 of his 11.
So,
okay. Yeah. So really, really, really productive from him. And
yeah,
he did it variety of ways. Got to the line, hit a 3, kind of got the ball to the rim and banged a little bit, converted tough shots at the basket. He did it all different kinds of ways. It was great to see.
Yeah, I mean, he was 4 for 6 from the field, 1 for 1 from 3, 2 for 2 from the line, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. That just shows he was real, and that's only 16 minutes. So that was very impressive for him.
That's filling up the stat sheet, right?
For sure. And I think the one thing that's real impressive about the meritocracy is now we're not in the locker room. We're not, with the guys when there's, texting each other or talking. I do not get the impression that anyone feels like, real upset, like they're owed anything. I mean, I feel like everyone's kind of okay with how things turn out. Like Trey Holloman's a great example. I mean, Trey Holloman was kind of playing okay, we'll say, during California. He had some ups and downs. He was not playing the best, probably. He's been really good the last couple of games, I think. And he's coming off the bench. Before he was starting, he started off the bench to begin the season. He seems like, watching him, he doesn't seem phased at all by where sort of his role. Now, that's just, again, my just watching him on the floor, but he doesn't seem like a different player wherever he's playing. He's very confident. I mean, he finished the game today and was, really good down the stretch. What he has, like 6 assists and 1 turnover. I mean, he was really good. I mean, I don't know.
I would say this about him. One thing, the move to the bench is fine because I don't think anything is going to shake that kid's confidence. That's my impression.
He doesn't hang his head or
And
anything.
he's kind of unfazed. Maybe he has a game or two where he's not as efficient as he'd like to be. No big deal. He's coming out the same way the next one. But I think for the, and again, you're right. We're not in that locker room. We're not those guys. So it's hard to know for sure. But just understanding a little bit about human nature that I've learned in my years and watching what this team is doing, it would be really difficult to get irritated by how the minutes are allocated on this team because you've seen it with everybody top to bottom. Everybody's been held to account at one time or another this year. Everybody, and so when you see that and you see that, and look, some teams, and it's for good reason. You could have a guy, you look at Michigan State last year during periods where they were struggling and they hung with some guys longer than you might have liked to see otherwise, but it was because I think Izzo didn't feel like he had a choice.
Mm-hmm.
He had to go with the guys he had. And that's how a lot of teams are. But this team is not built that way. They're legit 10 deep, and I would even say deeper than that. We just don't see those other guys play. Like I've said it many times, I think Kurtang could absolutely be playing winning basketball at the Big Ten level right now.
Right.
They just have too many guys. But it's hard to get too upset when you look around and see, hey, if there's a given night and I've got it going and somebody else doesn't, I'm going to get rewarded for that. I'm going to play. It's not going to be a coach says, this guy's a starter. I got to stick with him. That we have not seen that at all this year. Like I say, I really do believe it's as close to a true meritocracy as I've ever seen. Certainly a Michigan State team and maybe any college team I've ever watched. I just think it's really remarkable. We probably won't ever see anything quite like this again because year to year, even if you got a lot of the same guys back, year to year, things will change. But for this team this year, it's pretty clear that's the equation. And so you have a night like tonight where, hey, Frankie's got it going. He's going to play more. Zapala, for the first time in a while, I thought really played well. He got a little more time. It's just how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, it's impressive. It's remarkable to sort of the team watching him play. And I don't think there's, I mean, again, the thing that shocked me the most is how easily they were getting those lobs off. I don't think I've ever seen Purdue give up that many. I mean, Purdue is usually pretty tough inside, and they just were destroying them. I'm speechless because I've just never seen 10 dunks and 12 layups. I mean, they were easy.
Okay, so first thing is they're obviously not a great pick and roll defensive team, right?
That's clear.
That's very obvious. But the other part of that is, and we talked about this, they offer zero resistance at the rim, and that wasn't just tonight. It looked worse tonight because Michigan State can do things in that area that most teams they play can't. So MSU is going to punish you more. And I say that because I think Michigan State's combination of its guards and its bigs on those rim dives are better than anybody else in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's I don't think there's anybody better at it. And so they will really punish you. They also set better screens than most teams. So they'll really punish you if you've got a weakness there. And Purdue just does not have the personnel to really stop that. And that's how you get a game like you did tonight. And credit to Michigan State, I think, for really sticking with it and continuing to find ways to get into that kind of action and make Purdue pay. It's a transition help too, of course, because a lot of those baskets you mentioned did come in transition as well. But you put that together with the rim dives and then some penetration stuff. And also, Michigan State hit some shots that were, let's say, improbable in terms of, I think of one that Trey had in particular. That
Yes.
was pretty remarkable. I think Jace might have had one too. But hey, basketball gods reward you when you're playing aggressively and you're playing the right way. And that's exactly what they did. But yeah, I mean, to go to your point though, I think it was us seeing a team that's really weak in a certain area just get exploited by a team who's really exceptional in that area. And after the first 10, 12 minutes, Purdue was unable to keep Michigan State out of that action consistently. They did it for a while, but eventually the dam broke.
Yep. Yeah, you definitely they kind of flooded over in the second half and they just got swamped. And I think that was just partly, I mean, that in some respects, that was defense on Braden Smith, our player that Michigan State, we said had to keep in the gutter.
Yeah.
Brought to you by the Brothers Who Adjust You Gutters. Friends, it's almost spring, which means it's gutter time, which means it's raining. Make sure that water stays where it's supposed to be, which is not in your house. Make sure it gets moved away properly. And the only way you can do that is through good gutters. So make sure you have them taken care of. You can talk to the Brothers Who Adjust You Gutters, whether you're on the east side or the west side of the state. They can take care of that and make sure that everything functions properly. You can head on over to our support page at tffinots.com/support. And there you can find the links to get the estimates. If you mention Final Four, you can get 10% off your gutter work. They're working right now, so get it done before spring hits, before you start getting the real rain, because I know it's cold out there right now, very cold, which, incidentally, my daughter had a class go to Zoom because her one professor, this early in the morning, she doesn't like it when it's cold. That's like the third time she's gone Zoom this winter, which is crazy.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
The professor said we're doing it via Zoom because I don't want to get outside.
Well, that's never the reason is it's really cold for all of you. What's funny is she has another professor from Montreal, and he's kind of like, you guys are wimps. I'm going. It's not even cold.
Let me tell you something. In the old days, how
when
we
you walked
dealt with
uphill
that stuff? You got early. Well, you were not a Michigan State student, so a lot of our listeners will know what I'm talking about because they're of the same vintage as I am. You took care of that problem by getting your butt down to the pit early enough so you could get the schedule you wanted and make sure that you weren't walking all over campus in the winter term or trimester, especially.
Yeah.
So that's how we did it in the old days. That is,
I remember riding
else.
a bike. I remember riding a bike when it was 15 degrees and like 20-mile wind. So
I'm talking about like half-hour walks. Way.
I know. Yeah,
no,
I know.
It's
These
kind of
kids
I
nowadays,
had to walk 20 miles to school each direction, and
through the snow. Yeah, right.
That kind of talk. But that's crazy. Anyway.
All right. So Michigan State had to keep Braden Smith in the. Oh, by the way, Brothers Just You Gutters. They sponsored the player needs to keep in the gutter. Braden Smith, who was 7 for 13 from the field, 3 for 9 from 3, did not attempt a free throw. Strangely enough, had 17 points, 5 rebounds, one of them offensive, 8 assists, 6 turnovers, 1 steal, and no blocks. So, he scored. He got his points. There were a couple moments, you talked earlier that he would kind of defer too much, and he had a couple where I thought he had pretty clear lane to the basket, at least to draw a foul, and he kind of ran it back, and then they ended up with a kind of a lousy shot, which we've seen other point guards in Michigan State do that as well, except he's just a good scorer. And the fact that he's 6 turnovers, this is sort of like you've talked about this in the past, and I think that for the first time, Michigan State did what you thought you just need to get into that guy and really force the issue. And they just have the personnel this year defensively that can actually do that. I also think a key to that was both Cooper, Zapala, Kohler playing great on the hedges, stopping him from getting around the corner. And he was really disrupted and he wasn't able to find anyone, and he forced him either to go way too fast or kind of try some crazy pass. Although he scored 17 points, I think for sure with the 6 turnovers, and those were probably almost all steals, that was definitely, they kept him in the gutter, I think.
It's hard to say that a guy who shot pretty efficiently and scored 17 and did have 8 assists, so he did make plays for his teammates, was shut down. He wasn't shut down, but I could not have asked for more in terms of the way Michigan State defended him. I am with you 100% on that. I thought Fears and Holloman in particular, since they had him for most of the time. Aiken seemed to draw Fletcher Lawyer a lot. But those two guys, I thought, just worked him. He had to work for everything he got in that game. Everything that went well for Braden Smith. And then you talk about the hedges, and I agree with that completely as well. I thought Michigan State's bigs were outstanding in terms of stringing those plays out, not getting burned. It was very rare. He had some of those pocket passes he makes to Kaufman-Renn, but not a ton of them.
No.
You typically see more of that from him. And Michigan State really didn't get burned on those hard hedges all that much. I thought that was a big key as well. The one time he got loose was one where Carson Cooper kind of fell into Jeremy Fears, and they both hit the deck, and then Smith was able to get off a three, which he hit. But that was about it for easy looks. I mean, some of the shots he hit, and there's shots I see him hit in games regularly. He's a specialist at that, say fade away from 12 to 15 feet on the baseline. He hits that shot a lot when you watch him play game to game, and he hit a couple of them tonight. Those are tough shots. If he's going to hit those, okay. And they were well defended, like they were contested.
Yeah.
So if he hits those, you can live with it. But I think the biggest thing is, despite the fact that he, had the 17 points, had the 8 assists, yeah, they forced turnovers, which was great. And I agree with you. I think the majority of them probably were steals. They were live ball situations that Michigan State was actually able not just to get the ball back, but to turn them into points. But I think Michigan State took him away as a creative force. Fletcher Lawyer had to put the ball on the floor a lot more than he wants to. I mean, he's capable of doing that from time to time, but not as much. Cox, those guys, Harris, those guys had to try and do things with the ball far more than they typically want to. And it's because Michigan State took Braden Smith away a lot of the time. So really happy with that. Hard to say you kept him in the gutter, but what we talked about, we'll return to when we look at the keys, is you look at their big three. And to me, the key was, well, you're not going to shut them down, but can you make them inefficient? And I think Braden Smith's overall game, when you look at the turnovers, you look at the fact he didn't get to the free throw line, and you look at the fact that they needed him to take that game over, and he definitely did not do that. I think you're pretty happy with what you got if you're Michigan State.
Well, you're certainly happy with a 9-point win in your early matchup against a team that you've not been able to get much in the last 9 tries. So, yeah.
Yep.
So it's nice to maybe, hopefully, just start to turn things around a little bit. All right, so that brings us to the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. I don't know about you, but I like to save money, and so you can save 15% if you mention Final Four when you get your estimate for Squeegee Squad. So if you were in the Grand Rapids area, and that is a very large area, you'd have them come out and clean your windows, because we know, let's be honest, you're not cleaning your windows, especially this time of year. They'll come out and they'll wash your windows right now. So get up on the ladders and take care of that. They can clear the interior part, the screens, window sills, whatever it is. Whether it's your home, your business, high rise, whatever it might be. They can even do the state capitol. They can do any job. The great pricing. So head on over to Squeegee Squad Grand Rapids. You can find the way to get an estimate from Troy and his team at our support page. As always, tffinots.com/support. So they sponsor Who Cleans the Glass Best. So who cleans the glass best for Michigan State? Well, it's a tie today, is a push. So I actually had Kohler, so I thought, well, I get a good chance. And then he only had 4, and I had Akins who had 2. You had Cooper had 2, and then you had Carr who had 4. And so we tied 6-6. And I'm still 5 behind, 13-8.
I could take that, man. I'm
I know.
it out,
man. I tell you, that's how you just need to kind of run out the clock. Really, at this point,
it's 13-8.
13-8, yeah. I'm down 5. Yeah, it's
so you're at least in the regular season. The magic number is 5 1 at this
1,
point.
Yeah, right. 1, yeah, exactly.
It's 1.
So I need a hope for a long postseason.
Hey,
so
on a night where I don't have Jackson Kohler, I'll take a draw.
Yeah,
at this stage.
Yeah, no, it was interesting because I don't think anyone had more than 4 rebounds. Everybody sort of had,
exactly. It was extremely balanced, and we'll get into that in the keys. But it was kind of a weird game in that respect.
It was not kind of what we expected, but worked out for the best. So it doesn't really matter that much. So that brings us to the 5 keys of the game, brought to you by Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. You can get 20% off if you type in Final Four at the checkout line. Make the coupon code at the checkout. Make sure you put that in. Great Spartan apparel. I've got my Gruff Sparty basketball guy. I've got I need to get a real white one. I'm supposed to wear about white today in the upper deck. But anyway, this is a great sweatshirt, super soft and comfortable and warm. And everything at Nudge, it's all great. I love it. You got to get some more stuff, and basically I can't get enough of it. So make sure you go over to Nudge if you need it for you or your friend or your spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Make sure you head over to Nudge. You will not regret it. They have great stuff, great pricing, and just, high quality products, really comfortable. And initially I was going to put on a different sweatshirt, and it's like, I couldn't believe how bad that sweatshirt was. Now I've become spoiled by these sweatshirts. I'm like, I'm not going to wear that one. So I put this one on because it just feels like a regular shirt rather than just kind of like that boxy, the old time. You always had the sweatshirts like back in the 90s, they were always just kind of, well, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So head on over to Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. Huge selection of apparel. You can't go wrong. So first key to the game was boards. Michigan State won the rebounding advantage. It was 23-21. Both they and Purdue had 5 offensive rebounds. So Michigan State with a 20.8% offensive rebounding rate. Purdue with 21%. Second chance points, Michigan State had 4, Purdue had 7. Purdue had, I think, 3 offensive rebounds the first, 4 minutes of the game.
Yep.
And then and Michigan State really didn't get anything going on the boards for the most part on the offensive end. Obviously, it was just 5. So it was kind of weird in that sense. But of course, you shoot 69% from 2. There aren't a lot of opportunities.
Right.
It's mainly a lot of their threes they weren't getting the rebounds from. So I don't know.
And let me look at the number here. It was 58% overall.
Right. Yeah.
From the floor. So you're right. You're not going to have a ton of opportunities when you're shooting the ball that well. But I thought Michigan State would be capable of doing more damage in this area than they did. And if you told me the advantage would have been, they won the rebounding battle the way you need to measure it, which is, your offensive rebounding rate, but it wasn't a huge gap. And I probably would have thought, I don't know how good a sign that is.
Yeah.
For MSU. It ended up just honestly not mattering because Michigan State just outshot a team that is about as good shooting the ball as anybody in the nation. And so that was really, there were other keys too, but that was really the beginning and end of the story in terms of what really decided this. And the rebounds ended up not being a major factor. I'll admit to being worried in that initial stanza there that you described, because Purdue, and it wasn't like they were just kicking Michigan State's ass. It was, I want to say most of them early were of the tap out variety. Coffin Wren would get his hands to something and tap it out, and then a guard would scoop it up. They were the irritating variety, not of the wow, somebody just got their ass kicked variety.
Yeah.
It wasn't that, but it was irritating enough. Like, oh God, is it going to be one of those nights where they're just getting a lot of rebounds that just drive you crazy? And that stopped in short order. I think they might have had 3 in like the first 4 or 5 minutes. And then 2 the rest of the way?
Yeah, I think so.
It got shut down. That's for sure. So yeah, certainly not a negative for Michigan State, but not as big a positive as we had anticipated they might need. And especially because, which we'll get into, I believe, you were going into this game, at least I was a little bit worried about what the turnover battle would look like.
Yeah.
Because that is something Purdue has done pretty well. So you'd say, well, okay, we've got to earn a decisive rebounding advantage to offset what could happen in that area. And it just ended up not mattering because Michigan State actually had an advantage in the turnovers.
Well, the second key to the game was attack. And I tell you, one way to beat a team that shoots really well is to shoot a lot of dunks and layups. And Michigan State was 10 for 10 with dunks, 10 for 12 from layups, for 20 for 22 of the baskets within 6 inches of the hoop. You're going to shoot a high percentage when you do that.
Yeah, but also, and it was a legit number because it wasn't inflated by too much, at least by late game. I guess a little bit by a couple late game fouls, which were frankly shouldn't have happened. I don't know what the hell Matt Painter was doing. The game was over, and they were, in the
it's like they
last 30
conceded and then
seconds,
then they stopped conceding. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. Like they didn't foul where I thought they might, where they theoretically still had a chance, and yet they foul a couple times late where it made no sense.
Yeah.
But regardless, Michigan State did get 21 free throws up in this game. Now they were a little bit under what they normally shoot. They were only 15 for 21. Jaden missed a couple. It was weird. But Trey missed one. Guys who have been incredible shooters this year, just a little bit off, but you can't really complain too much about 15 for 21. So that was one function of the aggression, is that they were able to get to the line. They were able to force Purdue to foul them. And then, as you say, boy, the fact that they lived at the rim on dunks and layups, it's exactly what we talked about, at how you have to play against this team, because if you're just going to settle for threes, particularly if you're Michigan State, it's not going to go well. You're playing into that team's hands. So to attack them in their weak spot the way Michigan State did, check.
Yeah. Well, and I think the key was, Michigan State was 2 for 7 in the first half and 2 for 6 in the second half from 3. So they weren't relying on it heavily. That's kind of what we expect for a team, that shoots about 33%. They were a little under that today. So that's about what we hope for.
The shot balance was exactly where you wanted it.
Yeah, I think so.
The question was always going to be, can Purdue do what they often manage to, in terms of one way or another forcing opponents to shoot more threes and fewer twos? And that did not happen. Michigan State stayed with the game plan. They exploited Purdue's weaknesses, and couldn't be happier with the balance.
All right, so the third key to the game was the turnovers. Michigan State had 8, Purdue with 12, so that's kind of the opposite what we'd expect, because Purdue forced a lot of turnovers, and they don't tend to turn the ball over a ton. They tend to be pretty good with the ball. Michigan State with 10 or 11 steals. I'm not quite sure. I know they had 10 of the first 11 were steals. Michigan State with 19 points off turnovers, and Purdue with 8, so a clear big advantage, and you could say that's the margin of the game right there, actually.
Yep. Yeah, huge difference. And like we talked about, I think that segment in the second half where it went from, I think it was a 6-point Purdue lead to Michigan State being up 4, and then they ended up they were up 2 at the break.
Yeah.
That was in large part a function of Michigan State's defense, and in particular forcing a few live ball turnovers that they were able to turn into points. I mean, that once again, much like in the Illinois game, the rate of conversion of turnovers into points, 12 Purdue turnovers, 19 points off of those. That's pretty damn good. You're going to be just fine with it. It wasn't quite as good as it was against Illinois, where I think they were at 2 points per turnover in that one. But
you're not going to do that very often.
No, you're not. At 19 on 12, hey, that's great. And you're right, 10 steals. So 10 of those 12 Purdue turnovers. And I want to say the other 2 were offensive fouls on Kaufman-Renn. Or maybe one was on Renn and one was
you're
on
right.
Heidi.
I think that's it. Yep. Right.
Yeah. But other than that, it was all steals. And that was, Michigan State was just active. You know what happened a few times, and they commented on it in the game. I think they're absolutely right. One of the things that Braden Smith does a lot, but he's not made to pay for it very often, is he has a tendency at times to get himself in the air without a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And he's usually able to make something happen, or at least not have it turn into a negative play. But Michigan State was in such good position in this game that he wasn't able to survive those moments.
Yeah.
A few of those turnovers, especially in that stretch in the first half we're talking about, he got himself in the air, and Michigan State defensively stayed at home, and they were able to, he didn't have a shot opportunity, so he was trying to pass to survive keep the possession alive. And Michigan State was in position to deflect it, make a steal, and away they went. So big factor. There's no question about it, because they didn't do quite the job that you had maybe expected on the boards in terms of just dominating. And so it was a big deal to at least not have turnovers be a deficit. And then when you look at them actually being a big strength, that's a plus. that's
right.
how you get a 9-point win rather than, say a one possession game.
Yeah. And so the fourth key of the game was a free throw line. We expected Michigan State needed to attack against Illinois. They didn't get a ton of action at the line. I hear they had 21 free throws, hit 15 of them, and for 71%, which is not great, especially for a team that shoots over 80% usually.
It's not up to their standard, but I'm happy with the attempts.
Yeah,
and especially in the first half, it was actually I want to say they were 9 for 11. I think in the first half. And so that was a big part in a half where they really struggled to score until very late when they got into the open court a little bit more. I think getting to the line and converting most of those was a big part of staying in touch with Purdue. So, they didn't have that kind of Oregon or Illinois first half deficit to deal with,
Right.
It never got out of control.
It kept them afloat for sure.
And the line was a big part of that.
I was just gonna say Carson Cooper really kind of struggling from the line the last few games, and so hopefully he kind of gets that. He's everyone else seems to be kind of okay, but he's just I don't know, just got in his head now.
Yeah, it's the one thing that's gone poorly for him lately, because otherwise I think he's just been great.
Yeah, no, I totally
for
agree.
This last stretch of probably, I don't know, 5-6 games. I thought he was really good in California.
Yep.
And since they've come back from that trip, he's been as good or better.
Not bad for a guy they thought they're going to redshirt or, didn't even deserve to be a walk-on according to some fans. All right. So the fifth key to the game was the big three. So that refers to, of course, Kaufman-Renn, Smith, and Lawyer. Kaufman-Renn had 24 points. Smith, we mentioned already, had 17, and Lawyer with only 8.
He didn't have 24.
Trey Kaufman-Renn?
What did he have? Did he? Oh my God, he did. My bad.
Is that just with your impression that he didn't have that many points?
I didn't think there was any way he had 24.
Oh yeah, he was carving them up. He was very good. I was like,
he was efficient, but I just didn't think he got. I think it's the free throws that threw me.
Yeah, 6 for 7 from the line, 9 for 13 from the field. Line. But he only had 3 rebounds, which is kind of weird.
Yep, that's a big deal. I think the fact that they took one of the 3 completely away. So Lawyer had 8 points.
Yeah.
2 for 5 from the floor. Somehow he had 5 rebounds, which he never does. He averages like 2 a game. So I guess give him credit for that. But you did see, for as good a team as Purdue is offensively, and by all measures, they are elite. Everything except offensive rebounding. They're just really, really good. They shoot the ball from the floor from 3 and from 2 at a very high rate. And even today, a day where I thought Michigan State defended the hell out of them, they did shoot 51% overall. So it's not like they were completely shut down. But I think we talked about what they did with Braden Smith. And then I think the fact that at the same time, all that attention they were paying on Braden Smith, Foster Lawyer wasn't able to get loose. That's a huge deal because Foster Lawyer, we talked about it in the preview. Foster Lawyer really gets most of his activity done in terms of playing off those other 2 guys, because those other 2 players, Kaufman-Renn and Smith, demand so much attention that it's hard for a defense to also keep a guy constantly in contact with Lawyer.
Yeah.
And so Lawyer will get open threes as a result of that. That didn't happen in this game. And I did think that was interesting. And that was a real credit to Michigan State. They put him in positions where, all right, you can go try and make a play one-on-one against somebody off the dribble. And that just was not happening for him. He wasn't able to get loose. So to hold him to 5 points, 6 points below his average, that was a big positive. You're right about Kaufman-Renn. Funny thing is, most of that came in the second half because at halftime, he was only 3 for 7 from the floor. I thought in the first half, they did a pretty good job
Yeah, he
of
had 8 points in the first half. Yep.
of making him work. And then the second half, he got rolling a bit, but it was never in a way that you really felt, oh boy, he's taken over and Michigan State's got a problem, because they were scoring so efficiently at the other end that it didn't really matter.
Right.
It was interesting how they defended him, and we talked about that.
It varied,
quite a
didn't it?
bit.
It was the same all the time. It was
What's that?
sometimes it said it varied. Sometimes it's doubling
Exactly.
team, sometimes it's straight up. I don't think he ever knew what was coming.
Exactly. It was the one thing they didn't do very much of, is there wasn't a lot of dig down from the guards. Occasionally you'd see a half-hearted element, but no, I don't remember a single possession where somebody came hard from the perimeter. So it was mostly down to, are they going to play him with single coverage, or are they going to bring a double? And I thought, I give credit to him, because I thought Michigan State actually did a pretty good job. He hit several tough shots, and to his credit, he's a specialist at that. I had said, I thought coming into the game, he's the best pure low post player in the league, and nothing I saw tonight changed my mind. He hit some shots that 90% of the guys in the league don't hit, through what were pretty well contested shots. Good defense, guys staying big, not fouling him, making it a tough conversion, and he would just make the shot. So again, it's like with Smith on those baseline fallaways, you just kind of tip your hat and say, all right, if you're going to hit that shot, there's not a hell of a lot I could do about it if I've contested you as well as I possibly can. So I think Michigan State did enough here, because even with Kaufman-Renn having a very good game, Smith, as we talked about, did have some inefficiencies and was limited in some ways, taken away in some ways at times by MSU. And then Lawyer really never got on track. So that to me is a win, because they don't have enough. Some of those other guys, Cox, First, Harris, Colvin, Heidi, all those support guys are okay. And some of them have certain things they do in a very efficient manner, but they're not volume guys. None of them are volume guys. And they weren't going to be volume guys tonight. And if they tried to be, I think Michigan State would have lived with that. It's always about, can you make those big three guys really have to work for what they get? And I think Michigan State did that.
Yeah, and I think, and additionally, you have Smith, who's just made all those mistakes and had those turnovers.
Well, that's what I mean. They
really made it hard for him.
Not as efficient a game from him as he would have liked.
Yeah. So Michigan State now moves to 12-3 in the Big Ten. They're one game behind Michigan, or are they half game? I can't remember. Half game behind Michigan.
They played one more than Michigan right
now. Purdue now has 5 losses. I wouldn't say they're out of the Big. I mean, they could still maybe get a share of the Big Ten. If everyone loses 3 games, it's hard to imagine at this point, but they've lost 3 in a row. It's kind of unlikely, I think, that they're going to be the Big Ten mix, which is interesting, from a Big Ten, not that it matters that much, but all Big Ten team, it's kind of be hard to imagine a team that doesn't end up, one of the top 2 teams or something in the league, not to actually have someone Big Ten Player of the Year. They have definitely some candidates we mentioned before, Smith and Kaufman-Renn. And yet Michigan State, if they were to win the Big Ten, I don't know who you'd have anybody on the Big Ten all-conference team, which is kind of funny, because just nobody...
You won't have anybody on the first team. And
it's kind of weird, isn't it?
It will be interesting to see if they get anybody on any of the top 3 teams.
Yeah.
Which
all
is
freshman team, probably? All freshmen, probably, right?
I mean first, second, third team. All freshmen without question.
Yeah.
Jace Richardson will be there. And that's a hell of an accomplishment, because this league is filled with some very, very good freshmen. But I do think he will make that team. But first, second, and third team all league, I don't know. And so here's the thing, then turning to the conference race. So as we're recording this, we've seen Wisconsin sandblast Illinois. And that's unfortunate, because Wisconsin has got 4 losses, but their schedule the rest of the way is pretty easy, barring one game at the Breslin Center. So I go back, and we know Michigan is a game up in the loss column on Michigan State right now, but I I go back to the line from the immortal Will Golston. He didn't invent this line, I don't think, but he's the one I always associate with it in my mind. We got to cut our own grass. And that's where Michigan State is. They have got that game against Wisconsin. They've got 2 games against Michigan. In my mind, you're right. It's not mathematically impossible that 5 losses could get a share of this thing, but it's getting increasingly hard to believe that it will.
Yeah.
For me. So Purdue right now, believe it or not, Purdue is now in a really serious battle to keep that double bye.
Right.
Because they are currently, UCLA, as we're recording this, is not surprisingly wiping out Minnesota at Pauley Pavilion. So they're going to be 11-5, which I believe is the same exact record Purdue now has in the league. And you've got Maryland as a 5-loss team too. So if you assume that Michigan, Michigan State, and Wisconsin probably are your top 3, well, that's a heck of a battle for the number 4 spot. And even if one of those other top 3 teams ends up in you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very competitive. Purdue is in a spot now where very easily they could be playing on Thursday, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it would be Thursday.
Yep.
You could see that happening because, now look, UCLA's got to make one more trip east, I believe. I think they may be playing at Mackey, actually. That'd be a heck of a game. And Maryland, I think, has done a lot of good things. And at times they look as good as anybody in the league. And then they'll have a game or 2 where it all kind of falls apart. So we'll see, but they're in it. I do think personally, I think we are down to a 3-team race, and we are 1 Wisconsin loss away from it being a 2-team race.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was a snowball's chance in hell that maybe Illinois would go in there even without Morris Johnson and pull off a stunner in Madison. It was not to be. Wisconsin absolutely controlled that game. Illinois now 9-8. We were talking before we started recording. That's looking like maybe a best case 10-10 team, which is pretty remarkable for the group with the highest ceiling in the Big Ten, right? National
10
broadcasters, right? Delusional Illini fans. It's funny. You actually have to play the games to find out the real answers to these things, right?
Yeah.
It's a weird deal. But we're going to do a full preview, and you're going to get the way. It's been a while since we've had a Michigan State game like this. We got to go back to 2019, where Michigan, it was a very similar kind of deal. I want to believe wholeheartedly that it's an omen of what's about to happen. But if you remember, Michigan State was a little bit behind Michigan and had been for most of the year. That part isn't true, but the being behind now by a shade is. And MSU had to play them twice in the waning stages of the regular season.
Right.
And then they had to play them again in the Big Ten tournament championship game. And they swept them 3-0. And that was what I think was the final spark to get that team to a level where they were ready to go do work in March. And we know what happened next. They got to a Final Four. It sure feels similar. And like that season, the first one was at Chrysler. So it's going to be interesting. We'll have a lot to say. I've thought about it a lot already. I think it's a fascinating matchup between these 2 teams. So in some ways they're similar, and in some ways they're very, very different in terms of what the strengths and weaknesses are. New coach, I've heard Dusty May already talk about the rivalry because Michigan doesn't have a game this week.
Right.
So that's one of their advantages. They played on Sunday, and they've got until Friday night to just focus on Michigan State. But I heard a couple things from old Dusty that made me wonder how this is going to go.
Yeah,
and
okay.
we'll talk about those on the preview. But I'm not sure Dusty gets it yet. I'm not sure. He's going to get it after Friday night. He'll have a better understanding. I'm not sure he understands it yet. Well, and given that most of that team is brand new, I'm not sure that those guys do. Whereas on the other side, I think most of Michigan State's roster is a pretty good idea what this is about. And I sure as hell know the coaching staff does. So that doesn't guarantee anything, but it's an interesting point. I saw John Beeline go through that. It took him, now he was working with far less material, in fairness to him, as well than Dusty May is, but I feel like it took him a few years to really understand what that game's about and what it takes, and we'll see if Dusty May is a quicker study on that front. Maybe he is, but boy, you couldn't ask for more, right?
Yeah, this is what you want to, big.
Yeah.
It's much fun as just beating up on a Michigan, that team that's won like one league game or something. It is more fun when it's a really big game and you end the season with them too, right? I mean, makes the rivalry more fun. Just
Look,
like same in football.
Last year was fine because they stunk and they were awful, and you like beating a team like a drum, but it's not. It doesn't mean as much. It's much more fun, and honestly, too rarely over the years have we had this kind of situation. We do have it from time to time. The Beeline era, for about the last 8 years or so, mostly got to that point where they were, I mean, I could think of a lot of high energy, high emotion, heavy duty games during that period. Obviously there were during the Fab Five period and during Michigan State's initial ascent in 97, 98 at the beginning of the Izzo era, there were some very, very big games against Michigan, but it has not happened a whole hell of a lot that it's been a 1-2 kind of deal. And so when we get it, like we're going to have on Friday night, yeah, you really have to treasure it because it doesn't come around every year. And if you win those games, boy, it means a hell of a lot more.
All right, well, I think we'll close it there. We'll be back probably tomorrow or soon with the preview for Michigan. Thanks to all of you who joined us live. Paul, Tim, DM, Brian, Spartan Ag. Thanks a lot, guys, for leaving comments. And anyway, I think we'll probably close it there. So
one more comment.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like we've just kind of glossed over this. They just beat Purdue.
Yeah, it's just Purdue. Whatever.
Yeah, but that's not. I mean, 1-8 in the last 9 against that team. They just beat Purdue, and they did it convincingly.
Yes,
they did it in
an
style.
Easy win in some respects. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. We should not just talk past that. I mean, I don't want to spend all night. We've said it in a lot of different ways, but I don't feel like we've really acknowledged just how big, and it's a huge win because you're under pressure. You lose it, you're 2 back of Michigan in the loss column. You feel like maybe your opportunity to win this thing might be slipping away, or at the very least, you're really reducing your margin for error to near zero. And you go out and you handle business against a program that has had your number. That's a big deal. And that's, this is the kind of thing, a night like tonight is the kind of thing that we have seen out of truly great Michigan State teams, out of Michigan State teams that do things like win Big Ten titles, go to Final Fours, all that stuff. I'm not saying this team is doing either of those things yet, but if you're looking for signs, a night like tonight is a sign.
Absolutely. All right, we'll leave it there then. Michigan State beats Purdue 75-66 in convincing fashion and gets that monkey off their back. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go green. All right. Now we'll see how quickly I can close down the live stream here.
You let me know when we say sayonara to everybody. Thanks for joining us, folks.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, as I attempt to turn off YouTube. The one thing, they really make it very difficult to turn it off. So anyway, here I go to try and find it. But I think I'm faster than I've been in the past. There we go. Not bad. All right, the stream is done.
We're clear? Okay.
We're clear.
So what do you want to do?